Tailmaker.
Welcome back to the next Tailmaker. Once again, we lied about there being cookies. There are no cookies, but we do have cool features to talk about, working with game engines, localization, and more. Tailmaker works with Unreal 4 and 5. The plugin has an easy-to-use drag-and-drop interface that teaches Unreal how to read and deploy Tailmaker files. It will give you access to all the Tailmaker elements, allowing you to see all your assets at work in the engine. The first step in bringing your Tailmaker files into Unreal is to set up the player component. It's an attribute that you must set on your player character. You can only have one player component at a time. It will allow you to set up a list of the characters available to you in Tailmaker, as well as set up the name of the player character. The actor component needs to be put on every NPC that can talk. You simply define which conversation this NPC can play, and then set the NPC's speaker tag, and you're all set. It's simple to import your assets into Unreal. Tailmaker provides two file types. First is the conversation itself, the .tail file. The second is the character database, the .ctail file. To set up a conversation or multiple conversations, simply drag and drop the .tail and .ctail files into the plugin folder. The .ctail file will automatically generate a character list and assets for each character. As mentioned, the .tail file is the conversation itself. If you make a modification in the character list, such as creating or deleting a character, all you must do is drag and drop the .ctail file in again, and the character list in Unreal will update. The player character in Unreal has a component where you set the attributes for Tailmaker. In the player characters component, you set the list of characters, and you should only have one list. Here, you also set the attribute that tells Unreal that this character is the player character. It's the same for every NPC. For each one, you select the component and set the attributes. You can label this NPC Talker1. You would also set the conversation file for this NPC if you had a conversation ready to go. And on this other NPC, you can set them to be Talker2. Importing the conversation is the same as the character list file. You drag and drop the .tail file, the conversation, into the plugin folder. It will generate a conversation asset and a conversation data table. The conversation asset that is generated this way contains a list of the characters that are referenced, as well as a link to the data table and all the raw data. In the data table, you can find the line ID, line text, and any other metadata we include. You can also find audio assets that have been plugged into each node. Now that the conversation is imported, it will appear on the list of conversations that you can attach to this NPC in the NPC component. Then you can play it directly. To play this conversation, we have an interaction system that has been made for this demo. But of course, your game can play it any way you like in Unreal, once you've dragged it into the plugin folder and set up the data. Just as with other parts of the plugin, it's very easy to update. If you've modified a conversation in Tailmaker after importing it, simply drag and drop it into the plugin folder in Unreal, save, and it's updated. Every asset can be localized. The Tailmaker plugin allows for line variations by language. You set this up in Unreal, and the plugin will recognize it. Sometimes you want to test the logic and flow of your conversation in the tool. For that, Tailmaker's got you covered. We can open our current conversation in this window and play through it as if we were in a build of the game in Unreal or some other engine. We simply follow different paths and see where it takes us. Or we see if we can break it. The conditions, actions, and blue links all function just the way they would in-game. Of course, many conversations will start with some booleans set to true and others to false, or with some counters at 0 or 5 or any other number. How do you test for that? Tailmaker looks at the conversation, discovers all the variables that are being referenced in whatever capacity, and creates this handy menu where you can set the starting conditions for your conversation. The UI on this test isn't very pretty yet, but you can absolutely test the entirety of any conversation, no matter how complex, inside the tool. Tailmaker is set up for localization. When you import nodes and logic into Unreal Engine, you can add a variation on each line, which is another language. All the same logic and flow will still apply. The conversations you've seen in these demos are all available in French. Currently, Tailmaker is only set up to handle one additional language. As we develop the tool further, we can expand that. The same holds true for different dictionaries and alphabets. We've been over all the individual components that Tailmaker uses to let you make a conversation that can be as simple or as complex as necessary for your game. So let's take a look at a full conversation. You can collapse the whole thing, or expand the whole thing, or just click through one node at a time. It's very easy to understand the structure of the conversation while still being able to follow the emotional logic. Conditions and actions are clear and easy to understand. If you click on a blue link, it takes you to the master node. If the developer constructing the conversation observes some formatting best practices, which would be set by the team, it becomes quite easy to parse, understand, and review even the most complex conversation. In this conversation, for example, I've set all the blue links higher in the conversation so that the master node for any blue link is at the bottom and is always the last instance of that line. Also, the first interaction with the NPC is at the bottom of the queue, and each new interaction is higher up, with the newest interaction being at the top. As you can see, if the character has a one-liner that indicates they don't have anything more to say, it sits at the very top, as that will be the character's only line for the rest of the game. There's no need to test a bunch of conditions every time the player clicks on this NPC. You'll notice that this long, complex conversation has a lot of blue links in it. The designer is moving things along to where they need the player to be. But it's also the case that using blue links can really cut down on the number of nodes and lines in a branching conversation. Tailmaker is an elegant combination of strong technical tools and a format that allows designers to unleash their creative potential. Tailmaker is at the minimum viable product stage right now. It's 100% functional, and you can create deep, complex, rich narrative experiences in a game engine today, full stop. However, there are many additional tools and accessories that Tailmaker needs in order to scale up for larger teams. We have a development roadmap that will take Tailmaker to that level, but we're not there yet. For now, Tailmaker remains an intuitive tool with fast iteration that gives designers an incredible amount of power while allowing them to work in a creative state. Thank you for watching our Tailmaker videos.